Today, the New Jersey Devils continued their season from hell and finally fired head coach Lindy Ruff in a move that many fans were asking for and many media people were waiting to happen. I personally thought it would happen at the end of the season. Didn't think it happened a few days before the trade deadline, but here we are. The Devils fired Lindy Ruff. And here is the official statement from the New Jersey Devils that dropped on us at 5:14 p.m. Eastern Time. The Devils today announced that they have relieved Lindy Ruff of his head coaching duties and named associate coach Travis Green as interim head coach for the rest of the season. The announcement was made by Devils president/general manager Tom Fitzgerald. Green will start his role at Tuesday's morning skate in advance of that night's game against Florida. I hold our entire organization to the highest level of accountability to focus on being a competitive team that expects to be a perennial playoff contender, said Fitzgerald. Unfortunately, we are not currently at that level, and I needed to make this decision. Then he goes on to talk about how difficult of a conversation it was and how difficult of a decision it was, and yada, yada, yada. But here we are. The Devils went on a disastrous California road trip. It started with a great win in San Jose, to be honest, but the last two games, I think, are really the nail in the coffin for the entire season. It starts with on the back half of the road trip, 3-game road trip, the California swing. They went San Jose, Anaheim, and LA. They defeat the San Jose Sharks convincingly, 7-2. Awesome. Thumbs up. You are fighting for your playoff life right now, New Jersey Devils. Great job taking care of business against San Jose Sharks. Then you go to Anaheim, another team you should beat. What happens? You put up a stinker, but you got a chance at the end to tie it, send it to OT. Jack Hughes gets stopped by Dostal. Bad look. Social media is ripping them. Whatever. You go to Sunday and you lay the biggest stinker that you've laid all season long against the LA Kings. You lose 5-1 in a game you absolutely need, because at this point in the season, if they still thought they were a playoff team going into Sunday's game, they needed every game, and that game was so important, and they didn't show up. The Devils didn't show up on Sunday, and the thing they're getting the most criticism for is something that involves the coaching staff. With 5 minutes left to go in the game, it's 4-1. The Kings are up 4-1. The Devils pull their goaltender. And what proceeds to happen? They do not send out the extra attacker to go 6-on-5. Jack Hughes has to swing around, look around, signal to the bench and say, hello, why do we not have 6 guys out here? Why is there still 5 of us, even though the goalie is pulled? And at that point, if I'm Tom Fitzgerald, I say, okay, hands up. You lost it. Lindy, I'm sorry. This is it. You gotta go. There's no more waiting. And I don't know if that was the final moment, because there's a million other reasons why you let go of Lindy Ruff. But for me, I look at that and I say, you can't return tomorrow as our head coach after that performance. After losing the game you should have won in Anaheim, after that mess of a coaching job in the Kings game, we're done here. And let's get into all of the reasons that Lindy Ruff is relieved of his duties today, and all of the reasons that the Devils are having such a bad season, and all of the reasons that I think Tom Fitzgerald deserves as much blame as anybody in this entire situation. I want to start with something that Nick Villano on Pucks and Pitchforks wrote about Lindy Ruff. They wrote, Devils fans spent a lot of time discussing Lindy Ruff's daily lineup. The status of Alexander Holtz took up way too much time in our collective social media conversations. Do we think that Holtz should be on the fourth line? Of course not. Brendan Smith shouldn't be playing on his offhand for weeks. Jack Hughes shouldn't have Curtis Lazar on his wing. Simon Nemec should not have started the season in Utica. The lineup decisions did not lead to great chemistry, and it hurt the Devils. The Devils had one line play more than 150 minutes together this season, and that's Andre Palat, Nico Hischier, and Jesper Bratt. On the other hand, the Rangers have had 3 lines over 230 minutes at 5-on-5, and Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere had played 612 minutes together. I think that paragraph there by Nick was great, because Lindy Ruff never got how to use his players. He never understood how to deploy these guys, like how it was so easy last year. Last year, it seemed to come so easy for the Devils. They have great offense. They can outscore anybody. Jack Hughes was a monster. And when all of that went away, when the defense is depleted as they are right now, when all of the players who performed at such a great level last year have taken a step back, when Timo Meier isn't living up to expectations, when you don't have all of these things clicking all at once, Lindy Ruff was lost. He had players all over the lineup. And one thing NHL players always agree on is that you want some sort of consistency out of your lineup. You want to be able to show up to the rink that day and not look at the lineup card and kind of know where you're going to play and what line. And Lindy Ruff, injuries are a part of that, obviously, but he never really figured out this lineup. And the way they played as well goes a lot into this because the defense was depleted all season long with Dougie Hamilton out since November. And Tom Fitzgerald, who I think deserves a lot of blame in this, got rid of Severson, got rid of Ryan Graves, replaced them with the guys he had on the roster, with no one from the outside. We have Luke Hughes, who's so young, Simon Nemec, who's so young, Kevin Ball is still young, John Marino is 26, Siegenthaler's 26. We have this young core of defensemen, and Lindy Ruff didn't know how to create a system for them to thrive in. There was a lot of over-committing to the puck. If you watch some New Jersey Devils games, they love having the defenders go towards the puck and leave the middle of the ice open, and that's all coaching and systems. And he didn't know how to manage this team with a bunch of young defensemen with Dougie Hamilton out. And it's been a disaster. Tom Fitzgerald needed to understand that early on and make some moves to fix the D-core. And I feel like that's going to be a huge offseason task for him because you can't have a young team with no standout vets playing the entire back end and expect them to go up against stable competition in the NHL night after night after night and not get exposed. And Lindy Ruff did not create a system for his young defensemen to thrive in, and Tom Fitzgerald handed him too many young defensemen. There's two parts to this, and neither of them work very well together. And if we're talking about deployment, the deployment of Nico Daws the last few weeks has been an absolute disaster. And that one right there is entirely on Lindy Ruff. So this is from Chris Fieldhouse in All About That Jersey. Since Daws took the starter's net on February 12th, he is 5-5 with an .879 save percentage. His post-stadium game collapse has been so great that has given him the worst save percentage on the team. That's 10 starts in 21 days with only one game fully off. For a guy who missed the start of the year for recovery from a major hip surgery, playing a goaltender 10 times in 21 days is entirely a coaching decision. There's not two ways about that. You can literally just play someone else. And Lindy Ruff had a refusal to use his goaltenders in any kind of smart way. And the goaltending hasn't been there. Obviously, Nico Daws has struggled, but Nico Daws has never been somebody who can play a ton of games in a row. And I don't understand how you be so stubborn and you don't see that. And one thing about Lindy Ruff that I haven't mentioned is that the players did really like him, but we never saw the players compete for him on the ice. Jack Hughes in particular was a big fan of Lindy Ruff, and it's hard to see a guy who is beloved by your star player to see him go out, but we never saw Jack Hughes on the ice play like he was defending Lindy Ruff's job. One thing that's really happened this season is the Devils get pushed around a lot. And if you're the GM and you're seeing your team get pushed around, you blame first the coach and then you blame the players because they might not be motivated by this coach to play in a style that's going to win in the NHL. And this has got to be the first reaction from Tom Fitzgerald. Okay, we have to get rid of Lindy Ruff to see who the problem is. So there's no choice in this matter. I think Tom Fitzgerald's hand was forced based on how the players play and how they didn't compete for their head coach. And he's made the right decision here to get rid of Lindy Ruff. Now we can evaluate our extremely young D-core, the compete level of our stars. So going forward, I think Tom Fitzgerald has a massive undertaking here to rebuild parts of the defense, or just hopefully the next coach that comes in can just create a system where the young players can thrive in a very difficult league, or you swap them out for some veteran players who will frankly play a little better. And looking ahead to Friday, there's a big question about Tyler Toffoli, who is a UFA coming up this offseason. Personally, I think you bring back Tyler Toffoli. I think there's too much risk if you are just trading for futures here. That doesn't make sense to me because at the core of the New Jersey Devils is a very good hockey team that hopefully will be back in the playoffs next year. It's all there. The pieces are there. Based on what we saw last year, there are many pieces here for the Devils to compete. And I don't think there's any giving up on this core, on this roster. But you need guys like Tyler Toffoli to supplant the Jack Hugheses, the Jesper Bratts, the Luke Hughes. All of the young players need vets like Tyler Toffoli, and that's somebody who's proven his stance in this league, and he can play. And I have confidence in Tyler Toffoli's game going forward in the immediate future. I would retract everything I'd say if Tyler Toffoli thinks he can get a 7-year deal somewhere, if he thinks he can get a 6-year deal. A 3-year deal, a 4-year deal with the Devils is perfect. I think if Tom Fitzgerald can get Tyler Toffoli signed for 4 or under amount of years, there's a lot of reason to keep him around on this roster. Else, there should be a hockey trade made where you're bringing guys back who can play now. Draft picks don't help this team unless you're flipping those draft picks for players who can play now. If there's a way to make the Jacob Markstrom trade that got nixed by Calgary ownership last week, maybe you revisit that in some possible way through a Tyler Toffoli. I'm not sure, but I don't think giving up on vets unless there's something that can help you compete next year, coming back, like you're flipping another draft pick that you get back in that deal, then I think it makes sense. But just getting futures doesn't make sense for the Devils right now because they're good now. Who needs the future when you're good now and you're going to be good next year? Right now, the Devils they have 64 points in the standing. The Tampa Bay Lightning have 72. 8 points out with 21 games to go and 2 teams in between you isn't a recipe for how to make the playoffs. Unfortunately, this year has got to be a step back year for the Devils. Lindy Ruff clearly wasn't the head coach to bring them to the promised land with this core. Rebuilds are a long process. They aren't a straight line. I think that is the most important thing to take away from today, that this isn't a disaster on the Devils. This is a bad season, but rebuilds are roller coasters. There's going to be up and downs for this. And unfortunately, this is one of the bigger downswings. But now it's about bringing in a coach who can coach these guys in a system that'll work for this core and building it back up to where you should be and back into the playoffs next year for the Devils. What are your thoughts on firing Lindy Ruff? What are your thoughts on the future of this core and this team? What changes need to be made? If you like this video, hit like. If you really liked it, hit subscribe. Thank you for being here. Good night from Toronto.